the building, the city was alive, like the crafts are alive, and the AI kind of runs things or knows what your impulses are and knows what your desires are. And I come out on a spot where that humanoid is, and we're in the environment that's like a big mall environment and leisure and a lot of entities in gowns, jumpsuits, and I see those type of entities, and I see tall grays.
They are primarily engaged in a biological experiment aimed at gradually altering the physical and emotional characteristics of our future generations. The above information is not speculative. It is based upon personal experience and in-depth investigation. It represents part of the whole truth. There is much more. Please regard this as completely confidential. The record shows that all of those in possession of this information are subjected to harassment, threats, and even worse. John A. Keel, October 1967.
And I understand now the government knew that this is where it was going. And it makes sense to me too that they would be terrified of that, because if you don't know and you're not part of it and you're not connected to it, on the outside it looks like domination. It looks like control. Lou Elizondo actually said, the part of disclosure is that we can't let the powers know that we know. We can't control what the population does. And that's when I realized what it is. It's the genetics. The genetics are being put into the population. And if the government was to announce this, we might become enemies. And they're all slumped, and they're all like they're not aware, but they're all kind of slumped in their tubes. And he says, "See, we're making the new human. But like, what about us? Like, don't we get an opportunity?" That's what I said. Don't we get an opportunity to change? He said, "You had the opportunity, but the nuclear weapon was the last opportunity." And so he takes me from there out of kind of the shock I'm in. So then he takes me over to a hologram or a console where there's a hologram. And this seems to answer everything for me, the big picture stuff. There's a planet Earth, and I get emotional seeing the planet Earth. And then there's these like bites being taken out of it, like land is eroding out, and then the entire thing goes up in flames. So it was really a premise of like humans are damaging things so extremely, and then there's this rebuilding that occurs. Takes me to one more room, takes me to this space, and so this ball of light is the AI that runs the craft. But it's not AI. I don't like these words, but they're kind of similar. It's organic. Yeah, it's organic, alive, intelligent computer consciousness. I'm saying, what is this? Though I'm connecting to it and I can feel it, I'm asking, and he says, this is God. This is our creator. So everything we're doing with all these hybrids, the idea being that's creating a new human, everything we're doing is in line with the universal force, basically, is what it's telling me. And there's a moment, a really, really weird moment here. This is not deception. In the White Room, in the first contact event I talked about, I guess, an hour ago, I got turned into an orb, and I could feel unity with the craft in the kind of the God field with the craft. It kind of is God. Like I can't, like it is. Like in that moment, as the twin is telling me this, I'm having a unity with it. So I'm verifying what he's saying. This isn't like some kind of, trick of the mind, or because I proved it to myself. I proved that was real, that White Room experience was real, and then vice versa. Him telling me this, I link up to it, so I can feel the unity that it's projecting out. And so it's an interesting thing. He kind of disturbs me at first, really disturbs me with around human dead bodies, and then the cow, and then disturbing me with the hybrids, and then giving me information, and then kind of finalizing it by saying, but it is all part of a plan. It works within the spiritual God thing that you guys call God. It's kind of how it's being framed. Like, it is a spiritual event, even though it has disturbia to it. It has disturbing elements of the human mind. It actually is a spiritual event. And then he ends the entire thing with the human and the hybrid will work together over generations, merging the species into one. So there's this idea, put the hybrids on the planet, and those will be our buddies for generations, and we'll work alongside them. I actually imagine there'll be kind of some things we do not expect, like maybe they'll be highly attractive, and things like that. People will not. It'll be, we kind of have all this fear stuff in our minds, but in the end, when it's all said and done, I think people will be like, oh yeah, this makes sense. These guys are amazing, and we are not really. But I think the consciousness is the part that it has to get online with this. I don't mean just to accept it, but the fields and dimensions that they're working in, I think the human has to kind of step up a little bit to get on that level. And I think those are some of the conflicts. But yeah, that's the gist of it. I come down from that craft afterwards, and I have a conflict in myself, but I feel in general that I do believe that. I believe that what's happening here is a betterment. That there's something that is for us, that is in the kind of grand, natural, spiritual, God truth for all of us. This is actually beneficial for us.
I almost kind of picture that organic, lack of a better term, AI, or what they called God, is. I just translating what you're saying, and to me, it seems like it could possibly be a contained, highly contained source of the consciousness of the universe,
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
encapsulated
Yeah,
into this sphere, and that's how
yeah,
you could feel this automatic connection to it.
yeah.
And it's like a compacted portion of the consciousness of the
Nice.
universe
Contained. I like it. Those are great
contained.
words.
And this is kind of like my question, because I've heard what you've had to say, and of course, the human part of me, the monkey brain, goes, well, what the heck, right? So I'm like, okay, so where does that put us humans? And I go back to when I'm asking that, and as you're describing it, because I'm doing a lot of thinking here, and I appreciate you going in depth on it. Is when they mentioned that they would preserve you. That's interesting. It's like preserve as in like make sure that no harm comes to you when this
Right.
time comes around. Again, I'm just free flowing
Yeah.
here. Interrupt me as much as you feel necessary.
No,
And
that's
then
good.
I'm thinking about when you're talking about the creation of a city. So I'm kind of starting in the beginning and then I'm starting at the end, like the
Right.
creation of the city that they're going to have. But there's a major in between there. I think it's foolhardy for anybody to still say that we have not really exacerbated the terrible changes to Earth. Is it all due to humans? I mean, we don't really have control of what the sun does, as far as we know, right? But the Earth has been going through a lot of climate changes, and we have had a major impact in that. Major. I don't think that's even debatable anymore. So, I mean, it is kind of to the point to where we are controlled by whatever have you. But we'll just say for right now, greedy humans, that they don't care about what happens to the environment, and we're going over that edge, right? We're going over that edge. We almost do need that external help, right?
Right.
If we're going to talk about it as far as and view it as far as separation, we need that help. But what about the people like Jeff Selver? What about the people like myself, Daniel,
Right.
Christian, when that time comes? Because granted, not all humans are going to be hip with hybrids coming down and saying, hey, you know what, we got these great ideas, we're going to go ahead and preserve the planet. And then there's going to be people like me, which, you know what, I'm sign me up right now. Sign me up
Yeah.
yesterday. Sign me
Yeah.
up the day I was born to help
Yeah.
make sure that I help future generations inherit a good life on a pure planet. We're the only species on the entire planet that pays to live here. And it's about time. So I'm all for that. But I mean, we need some kind of a wake up call. And I
Yeah.
know the wake up call claims are coming from both sides of the spectrum of humanity, but there are some of us that would be willing to help, that are wanting to help, that are not hybrids.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask, what is that in between time going to be? So are we going to, and you seem to have touched on it, like working hand in hand with them over generations, and then do we breed out, perhaps like how Cro-Magnon bred with Homo sapien to an extent, or the
Yeah.
predecessors to become who we are now, with the DNA, which I believe a lot of cultures and tribes and through history have always said that the Star Brothers have helped make us, and such like that, to where what the human form that we see today, that we can touch and all the viewers can, is going to be replaced, but not in a nefarious way, but
Right.
just through an integration way. Is that
Right.
what they're kind of, that is that kind of the message that you're getting, Jeff, so we can build this better civilization for all, not just humans or human hybrids, but for every living plant and creature and everything on this planet. And then we can also take that and ascend in a more spiritual manner and
Yeah.
getting back to that universal consciousness that we have continually every day try to separate ourselves from.
Yeah.
How does that kind of, am I on the wrong path there, or am I somewhat?
Yeah, no, it seems for me you're on the right path. So I'll give the outline of what I believe to
Please.
be true. So I'm pretty convinced I have an MBA, so I studied the economy, and I actually liked having an MBA. It's a little bit antithesis to doing stuff like this, but it actually I'm a big thinker, and I really like understanding the systems. And I'm actually kind of convinced we're in a system that's a machine, and it's not. I also have a lot of compassion, and I also, having been in my own management roles and done my own things, I kind of really do believe that there's a lot of theories that certain people are controlling the stuff, and I'm actually more of a believer that there's a lot of hundreds of thousands of self-invested people who run it all, and then they all they make money and they have careers and they have families, and so there's all this self-invested interest in keeping the system we have alive, and and then in the end that doesn't play well with the facts of our physical environment, or what the physical environment can take. And I think that there's just a natural conflict. Actually, it's kind of just a natural conflict that they foresaw. I'm 100% convinced that this is, like, from everyone's version of the Eisenhower meeting, did it happen, did it not happen, regardless, the aliens are always talking about the planet, and they're talking about what the planet cannot take. And I think that that's really just fundamental, and I think that matters in this kind of bigger picture. It sounds very pessimistic, but I actually am 100% convinced it doesn't go away, and that there's an event that has to happen that changes everything up. And that is exactly how they framed it with me, that there's an event that will happen. And it's largely because, like, think about it, like, when it comes to the economy, and some people, I mentioned this in podcasts, and they get angry arguments in the bottom of the comments, which I don't engage with, and I can understand people wanting to feel that way. Capitalism is great, I do agree with that, but the bottom line is it runs off of GDPs. What's GDP? But it's the taking the natural resources of the country and turning it into something that can make money. So you always have a force wanting to take something out of the country. Even in my country, Canada, here, Trudeau is talking about something in France about climate and stuff, and they're okay. They're actually passing through laws in my own province to take trees down of an old growth forest that they actually tried to protect. So you have these weird, like, if you always have the force against preserving, and I think that that's the fundamental problem about what we're driving ourselves into, is a force always against preserving, which is the GDP and capitalism and the economy and the markets. And I'm not against capitalism, but I think that system goes right to the edge of of our future, and then the aliens, boom, and that's what they say to me, is that there'll be a planet event, and the way I just, like, I'm constantly, first off, there's the contact event. The 18th contact event is excluded from my book, and it's because it was traumatic for people, and I can't get the message out to myself when I'm traumatizing people, and I'm feeling awful for that. And in that contact event, I'm shown. I did a video on it. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that. It was a while ago, so I don't know if you were watching my videos at that time. And then that traumatized people, so I had to pull a video. And what they show me is, and I have corroboration for it. Linda Moulton Howe knew a guy in the government who knew about great waves coming, great ocean waves. I have several different sources that talk this way from kind of the more government side, that there's this idea of, if something happening with the pull of the planet, the aliens are in control of this stuff, and then they will be the ones to kind of initiate some kind of planetary change. And that alone is disturbing for just the nonchalant individual, never mind contactees. But what I learned very early on is that a lot of people have already heard these types of messages, so they're not too shocked hearing about this stuff. But it's disturbing for me to talk about too, so I don't really like it. This is what they show me from the North Sea, some kind of, like, pole shift, and it creates this just cataclysmic, earthquakes, but also the huge high level of ocean waves, I guess, offsetting, and then In my contact event, it was ocean waves coming in from the North Sea all the way up to the Himalayas, so basically burying Russia in oceans. So you can imagine how high those ocean waves would be. And this is the kind of stuff Linda Moulton Howe heard from her sources as well too, an S4 guy, an S4 scientist. And this, they just replay this to me in telepathy. I got one like 2 months ago, and it was very pronounced. And the metaphor was the entire humanity would be on a boat and it would flip upside down, and we'd be putting the pieces back together again.
Mhm.
So this idea of that we're scrambling to get everything back into like our infrastructure and everything are back together again. And the more I talk and the more I speak, the more I learn other contactees, other experiencers get exactly the same messages. Some people get the exact same, they see the same things I've seen. I find all this really wacky. And also John Keel in his documentary that seems to, or his document he wrote in 1967 that seems to foreshadow even my own type of contact events. He talks about the aliens being able to control planet events. So even be able to throw meteors at planets and stuff. So they can really shapeshift planets. And this is how they talk with me, that there's an event. And then after the destruction, they put the hybrids down. So it's almost like once the infrastructure has been loosened, then they put themselves down. And I think, as shocking as that is, my whole belief system is that, oh, so in the 18th contact event, when I'm told this, I'm actually asking, so you're going to do this? And they said, not us, the Federation. So the group of aliens kind of are overwatching the whole thing, or like, feel something like this might need to be happening. And and she basically says, we're going to unmake and remake the land. So an idea that they can terraform. We want the place to be populated by kind, spiritual, and peaceful people. And she basically says, like you, we want kind and spiritual and peaceful people to be there. And that's a really wild end result. It says everything to me. It says that the reason that they would allow the society to kind of go right to the edge and then create a planet event is that they actually, when they bring other people over into this new world, they don't want them to be traumatized. They don't want us generations of environmental degradation and starving and all the problems that can go along with it. They actually want us at our peak civilization and then create a transference over to the next one right away. And so they're trying to preserve people, actually. And that's the preserve word again. And you really nailed in on that. And I do believe everything you said is accurate there. But they want us in a certain mind frame that is not traumatized, and they want to bring us over, and those who can handle that world. And then this is just, if you study cataclysms from my own contact events, I looked at the Younger Dryas and tried to understand, world cataclysms. And in every case, the world doesn't go up, and the entire world doesn't get shaken even by big cataclysms. I don't doubt that there will be pockets of humans who just still are surviving and living out a normal life, maybe in Australia or something, or I think it will be so unsettling to a large portion of the population that that's when they intervene. But I also think humans will be coexisting. All of a sudden, these hybrids or something will kind of happen, and then you're right. I'm convinced that it will all make sense. That when we see the transparency of it all, the aliens are the ones who are kind of going to be saying, why did you do it, guys? Why did you bring it to this level where the human environmental degradation was happening to so extreme, and you're wiping out ecosystems and animals? The place, you share this space with other species. Why did you do that? And humans might be the ones who are face palming about it. It's like, wait a minute, how did we do that? And we might not even realize the damage we've done to such a degree that they felt they had to interject it. From the things that they have given me, quote unquote, the visions or the communications about those future events, humans are in a state of shock about how we got to that place. And that there is this kind of big brother thing going on, like, hey, we're here to kind of tear you back into this place. And there might be some shocking things about this new world that I'm convinced of too. Imagine a scenario here where it is now so dimensional that humans are second-tier species on the planet, and that's what I'm convinced is going to happen too. That that these hybrids are here to help us to get us to this level, but that there's going to be people here who don't get to that level, and they're still here, and they still survive, and they live alongside of it, trying to put the pieces back together again. And then they're the ones being like, do we want to join or not? And then, but there's people like you and me and other people who are like, no, we're experiencers. We know that world. We know what it's all about. There'll be there's 8 billion people on here, and there were people on here who are not paying attention to aliens, and they'll be shocked when all this starts going on unraveling. And that's the damage I think the government had the ability to communicate to and didn't prepare them. And I think that's some of the roles that people like me who's familiar with these entities, and maybe even like you who's familiar with them, will have to now, the aliens will be sponsoring you or helping you try to go out to these places and convince them that everything's okay and they're good people, and they're kind, and you're trying to convince the population, and now that there's an alien presence on the planet, stuff like that. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but they give me images like that, they give me visions like that, they give me sensations like that's how it kind of all unfolds. And that
And
actually, it might be stressful for people like me and yourselves
sure.
who care about humans suffering, and now there's this other factor, this alien presence on the planet that got put here because of the circumstance that government could have helped with, but they were
Mhm.
they were too stuck in trying to understand this all and couldn't move on it.
So we're getting more and more, and I don't think it's because of social media. I really don't. We're getting more and more and more people that are having experiences and are finding the bravery to talk about their
Yeah,
experiences. That's one of the things that brought us all together. Is that's one of the many factors, and more people that are seeing not just crafts in the sky, but shadow beings, other entities on this, that just out of their peripherals. There's all of these contact events are happening, and it's ramping up. And it's, again, I don't believe it's because of the increase in social media or just our increase in overall awareness. They are making a very concerted effort. When I say they,
yeah,
I'm just using it as just a lack of, again, better language, because
right,
as far as I'm concerned, they are me, I am them.
right,
We're all one. But they're making more concerted effort to maybe find and contact others that will help, like us, okay,
yeah,
or just trying to save as many as possible,
yeah,
okay, kind of like Sumerian, like Enlil and Enki and kind of thing, just trying to save as many as they can for that new world to
right,
become up, because it's so prevalent now.
yeah,
It's almost to the point to where the people that doubt any experiences are going to be the ones that are seen as crazy, because
right,
it's, I mean, really, if you think about it, like, I
yeah,
mean, how many times do we hear, oh, it's a weather balloon, or it's skydivers with flares, or it's miners with jetpacks? It's just like, really, I mean, you can only say swamp gas so much, and
right,
these things are evident now. It's
She
evident when you have the United States government, not just Grush, United States government going, yeah, we don't know what that is, but it's not controlled by it. You can say for certain that you don't know what it is, but it can't be. You're giving me you're not, of course, being honest, but I digress. So I think that, and you could feel free to disagree with me, I think that is just signs that it is ramping up towards that they're reaching out more than ever before
yeah,
with humanity,
yeah,
to those that, again, I think that can be open to it, that are willing to take that extra step and cast greed aside,
yeah.
to do that. So that's all
Bang
I
on.
have to say.
So I really zero in on that John Keel document. In 1967, he wrote this document. It's because what it tells me is this is what the government knew, and this is what the aliens have told the government, and so this is everything. And in that document, they're talking about how the UFO powers will have people on the ground, and they will be leaders, and they'll be sleepers, people who didn't know they were having contact, who will be awoken at a certain period that are specific. I'm like, that answers me. That's I couldn't even, how crazy that is. And then what I'm watching is exactly what you're describing, which is exactly what he talks about. Is that there would be this relationship. These aren't aliens. Like, this is a grand guess on John Keel's behalf. If he made this up, never mind that he actually has this document has word for word lines that my elder said to me directly, which is, we plant our seeds into human mothers' wombs to make the fetuses grow up to be like us. So the whole game that the government knew about back in 1967, at least, was that the aliens would be interjecting their genetics into humans altering the population so that there would be people on the ground who had leaders who vibe, who feel related to these things, who want to communicate with them. This is exactly what you're talking about, and it looks exactly like what's going on here. When I first saw that this is what was going on, this said to me everything. Then I'm right. This doesn't get resolved in our society. Gets resolved in their society, because like we can't. Oh, I had a dream last night. The Senate listened to me. The Pentagon take me seriously. Well, our own government institutions take me seriously. Now that I had a dream last night about aliens that we know are real because of the ways those dreams feel, but that's not going to be taken seriously in our own society. And it couldn't even wait 20 years, maybe probably wouldn't. 20 generations it might be, but 20 years, they're still not going to take that dream seriously. But in their society, they would. And that's where it all resolves itself. This contact is resolving itself in their world when they come. And that's what that shows me too. That alien contact is not the Jodie Foster at the Senate, please listen to me and take me seriously. Alien contact is a personalized consciousness experience that people are having, and there's a lot of it, and it's happening more and more and more and more. And I totally agree with you. And I understand now the government knew that this is where it was going, and it makes sense to me too that they would be terrified of that, because if you don't know and you're not part of it and you're not connected to it, on the outside it looks like domination. It looks like control.
That's their catastrophic disclosure right there. That's their catastrophic.
Actually, I look back at them having this information, and you can see some really interesting things about what they're thinking about. So Lou Elizondo actually said, he said, we can't, the part of disclosure is that we can't let the powers know that we know. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because they know. But he had to answer that. And I think Kurt Jaimingal's podcast, he really drills in, like, so you're saying that, if we tell the population that they could, then we would know their plans? He said, no, it's more about, we can't control what the population does. And that's when I realized what it is. It's the genetics. The genetics are being put into the population. And if the government was to announce this, we might become enemies. They might not be able to control the population. And, everything's benevolent on our side. We almost, again, there's evidence for everything being benevolent and for positive change. But, you can't control everybody in the world. And you could start a movement of people trying to eradicate the people with the alien genetics. And if that happened, the aliens might take their own hand and make things happen faster. That's what I think they think, that they're actually terrified for these forces who are now interacting with the population. They're terrified for them, for the rest of the population, to demonize this experience and what's going on. And so I think that's what they gambled with, is that they were trying not to have disclosure, while simultaneously interjecting people who have talked negatively about this. It's like a really interesting, there are some really weird people who came out with negative perspectives about all this very early on, and they just seemed to be fake. And so you have to ask, who's doing that? And if they knew this was the end result, then they might want the leaders' part to be hard, obstructed. They might want hard for alien leaders, not leaders is the wrong word, but people who are coming out, who are feeling connected to the phenomenon. They might want to make that hard for them, and make, that's the American government way of really obstructing this. And we're going down through, obviously, some speculation. From having that knowledge that they knew from the get-go, this was about interjecting alien genetics and changing the population as a whole, then their movements you can kind of see, even the Gateway Project makes sense then, because why would they do that if they obviously got some of this information that, phenomenon exists, the psychic phenomenon and all this stuff does exist from entities, then of course they would make a project about how they can personalize that for themselves. So it's kind of interesting how those are all interconnected, right?
What I was going to say earlier, just before we change topics or anything, is that we had talking off camera, and I've mentioned this to the guys as well, and I sent it to you. I'm not sure if you got a chance to see it yet. I know you're a busy guy, but there was a near-death experiencer who had described pretty much everything you were talking about, saying that when he was coming back to his body, he was seeing like our potential future of what that looks like. And he says that these cataclysms kind of like happen, and there is this these groups that try to grasp and gain some semblance of what we used to have, the old
Yeah.
structure, and it doesn't work. And then you have the other groups who are more spiritual, more loving, and they create their own smaller communities. And he said the United States looked different physically, geologically. He said there was like a great river running through the whole United States. And he says, I know it sounds scary. And he says, it's hard for people to really understand this stuff because there are agreements and, people who leave the planet passing, they die or whatever happens, cataclysmic or whatever. He's like, they play their role, but he's like, the good news is you don't actually really die because we're eternal beings. All of that happens, it moves all the stuff that's been blocking us out of the way so we can start rebuilding from the ground up. And that was a part 2 of the video that I sent you. In part 3 that I recently listened to, because I didn't listen to that part yet, the guest surprises him and asks him, do the aliens have anything to do with this? He giggles and it's almost like he doesn't want to say, but he's just saying, all I can say is that we get help and technology, and there are things at play that people don't understand yet. And it's exactly what you're describing. So
Right.
that's something
Yeah,
that
I'll
stood out
check
to
that
me.
out. Thanks, Christian. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I saw it and I
Yeah.
forgot about it, unfortunately. Yeah, so I will check it out, definitely.
We're pioneering the world's most expansive, phenomenon-based database and research platform. Imagine a single gateway that harnesses the collective intelligence of our world. A portal that compiles every encounter, every academic study, and the full spectrum of data concerning remarkable phenomena. Meticulously curated and interconnected through advanced artificial intelligence, our platform transforms scattered information across the web and in physical print into a cohesive matrix of knowledge. Paradocs aims to bring all this content into one searchable, dynamic database. We're not only hosting the world's largest collection of phenomenon-related content, but also helping empower our users to find critical connections between diverse topics, from UFOs and alien abductions to near-death experiences and reincarnation reports.
We were talking about kind of after this potential calamity, after this change, right? We work together with the hybrids, we work together with the species to build a better world, to change society and just the world so we can actually survive. I would love for you to go a little bit more into your experience where they took you to Venus and kind of showed society, at least the society that they showed you. I don't know if they were Galactic Federation. I don't know if that was the gray society on Venus itself, but I would love for you to go into more detail on that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks. So that's my 8th contact event, and it happens in 1998. So I just talked about the twin happening in July of 1998, so only 2 contact events prior. This was April, I'm pretty certain, April 1998. And we had just initiated the experiment in 1997, December of 1997, and I was traveling. And this is the first contact event I had while traveling. It's very emotional. I won't go into all that detail here, but I eventually realize it's the first time I'm realizing this crazy event that happened in my life, this consciousness event that was the experiment of discovering my soul. The Jeff Selver, who wasn't aware he's having contact events, had that experience. And then when the memory opens up in April of 1998, I'm extremely emotional. I had all this like internal guilt. It was such a mess. And as I said, cause and effect, I had this extreme elation in the first contact event. And now the 8th, I am the opposite. I was bawling. I was bawling hard. The pain was actually really extreme. And anyway, I won't go into what happens there. But the elder is very compassionate and takes me in. And the craft lands on the beach, and it's on Hornby Island here in BC. And I was backpacking, and I camped on the beach. And I go into the UFO, and happens at nighttime. And then she takes me up to a base hanging out in the atmosphere it's like outside the atmosphere, like low Earth orbit, they say. I saw it as the craft was approaching, and it's black on the outside, and it was tall. And then we get inside, and it appears that we don't go through a hangar. We just like meld into the door, or not, or like move through a wall basically in the craft, and then we're in a hangar, and the craft gets out. And this is the first time I'm experiencing this type of contact event where I'm now in their world. Before I was just having, contact events in the crafts on Earth. But at this point, now we're going into other environments that are very, very foreign to me. All this horrible feelings I was having, it's like mixed with like, wait a minute, this is amazing. And there's like that kind of, dog to human where the dog's like overexcited and like really, really wagging his tail and going nuts, jumping up and down. That's what's happening. I'm just like, whoa, this is really wild. This is amazing. And then basically get out into the craft and I'm in a hangar filled with like different types of, UFOs, different types of objects. And I tried to record what those different objects looked like I saw. And I do remember the pathway we took in this environment. We made it up to a hallway and we go down to a little spot. There's a transporter, and the transporters, the feeling of it is similar to other contactees I know, like Suzy, what her effect was like in these transporters. And then we make it to another level, and that's where I see a window, and I see that we're above the Earth at the low Earth orbit. We get into another room, and so basically she tells me to take my clothes off, and I get on a stage, and I find the stage really strange. I see two stages. It's kind of weird how they would have stages in biological areas, as if they kind of put bodies on them and analyze them or something. And so she wound me up on the stage, and then this kind of glass thing encases me, and a light beam goes through it. And she's taking I ask, and she says, "This was a great event. The consciousness event was a great event, and we're recording it for our records." And so I get down from the stage, and she shows me a perfect hologram of me on this tablet, this clear tablet. And then she's like, "Go in that room." In the room is a biological event. It's the first one I have, and I was pretty disturbed by it at the time. And but I also felt, okay, that's done. Hopefully that's the end of it. But I was disturbed. I didn't really know how to frame it any other way. And at the time, I didn't like that it went in that direction, but I was intimidated by them, but also felt bonded to them. It was like a really weird, like double in my brain at the time. And I didn't know how to handle it. And and I was also nervous to fight or argue with them about these things. And so it was a really weird game in my head going on about it. And, but then we walk out, and I leave from her space, and I go out to the window of the base where you can see Earth down below. And then she's walking up behind me, and there's this feeling of gratitude. And she's like, "We're grateful for the work you did with us. What would you like from us?" And so, the very human element, "Tell me where you are. Tell me where you're from. I want to know where you're from." And she says, "We're from Venus." And it's like, okay, what? That doesn't make any sense. And so the idea is, let's go. And so she leads, and then she's telepathically communicating with someone. Again, this is my first time experiencing this kind of mixed communication between multiple entities. And so we meet a humanoid, a person who looks like a human. And he's not human. He looks like human. He's a humanoid. And it's the first time I'm interacting with this. And then they're communicating with each other. And she says, "Do you want to show him?" I can feel it. I can see it, almost not see it, but you can see the telepathy. You can feel it. It's like a really intense feeling between them. And she's communicating. I can hear it clearly. And she says, do you want to show him where we live? And he's this open-hearted, like, again, this kind of purity that, doesn't really exist amongst us humans. And it's this open-hearted purity. And he's immediately very friendly with me. And he's like, "Yes, definitely." And he wants to show me. So I go with him. And there's a feeling, too, that he's younger like me. Like, so again, there's this idea that the aliens are trying to create relatability and pair me up with someone who would be similar to me, kind of like a teenager. I was 20 at the time. So he kind of felt like my age. It was really interesting. We get into the craft, and then he basically says, "You're going to drive the craft." And that's new to me. First he gets us out of the base, and then I put my hands on a pad. He kind of instructs me that you look on the screen where you want to go, and you fly there. And basically, like, you look, and then you impulse, we think to go there. And I'm actually convinced that the screen was receptive to my eyes. I wasn't explained that. So it knew where I was looking. And then instantaneously I show up there. And so it's not, I always kind of make a joke about it, that you imagine it would be like flying like this in space, but it's actually instantaneous. It's kind of a shot. Like you just show up there. And I was having, for me, this was elation. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I take about 4 shots in the middle between Earth and Venus. And then I get kind of concerned to go any further because I don't want to crash the craft. And not that I was aware I could do that, but I was insecure about what I was doing. And he took over, and then he flies us down into Venus. As unbelievable as that sounds, I actually, there's a whole bunch of things I was able to get right here. Where Venus was in April of 1998, you can actually look at where solar system, all the planets are positioned, and I videotaped myself recording it and then finding the information online and proving it. And so things like that were like, this definitely happened to me. And so he flies us in, and we're through the clouds, and now we're in this yellow environment. And it's confusing to me. I'm assuming that when they say they're from Venus, that okay, I guess Venus has life on it. I was kind of confused, and it's not. It's dead. It's just a dead, rocky environment, and we're approaching a city. And I was really confused by it, and I didn't understand it. And so the city is like kind of out in the open. It didn't make any sense. The craft lands, and then the door opens, and he walks out, and I'm immediately having the wait, what's going on here? Like, you're going out into this environment. Like, doesn't make sense. And I say, can we breathe the air? And he says, the air is normal. We get out, and I can exist out in the environment. I have a whole section in the book where I kind of dissect, dimensional phasing, possibly. Like, so if you were phased in a kind of an astral or paranormal realm, if the human body physically is, can it be in the environment without interacting with it? And there's some theories to suggest that something like that could happen here, and that's what this is. I'm phased in some kind of dimensional state. The whole city is phased, so the human technology can't see it, but there's a city there, and so I'm able to be out in the environment, and we walk down a pathway so it's this landing pad outside the city, and then we're walking up, and there's the city, and it turns out to be just huge, and there's a lot of mist and things obscuring the distance of the city. But I'm walking up, and there's towers, and the towers are cones and curved shapes, and with lights coming out of them, and it's all very surreal. It's all very molded, without it looking like the hard edges of human buildings. And as soon as I get in, it's an open walkway, so it's clearly interacting. It's like it's not affected by the environment. The walkway is open, and now there's beings, and there's all these beings around, and I'm just in a state of, like a dog. Like a dog would be how it gets excited about human things. That's exactly what's going on here. I'm just, oh my God, this is insane. And there's gray aliens, tall gray aliens sitting down. There's a hologram kind of like in between them. And like there's a sense of leisure going on here. Now, yeah, you're right. Is this Galactic Federation? There's no explanation given to me what exactly this is. Just that this is where the Elder spends their time. This is where the Elder lives, and there's other entities that live here. Is this the Galactic Federation? Is this a gray alien? I wasn't given any answers to that. I wasn't asking any questions either. And there's a really weird game here. Especially at the time, because of how isolated it was, that I was having contact alone by myself. So, and I wasn't aware of it. So then you're not prepping yourself with like, oh, I should be asking all these questions. I should be, getting answers from them. They should be telling me things. I'm kind of just a complacent teenager who says, if I ask too many questions, they might not give me these things. So then I have a weird game in my own head where I wasn't really I was feeling too intimidated to probe. And I felt like that's in some way what allowed them to do so many things with me that I wasn't really, pushing a lot. And so here I was in the city. The fellow I was with, the humanoid, says, "Do you want to see my place?" And I'm like, "Yes." We get on this like light walkway. That's what I call it. It's a transporter walkway, kind of a hybrid between physical transportation, so you could physically move really fast, but also be dematerialized. So I was able to kind of look at the environment as it
Would you
sped
say
by
the
me.
light is atmospheric? Like
The
no
light.
light fixtures that they have, whether on a craft or even in the city?
So in this city, the glass ceilings. So it was, I didn't see any lights per se, but it's glass ceilings. Yeah. And only once do I ever see their lights, because I look at their lights, and I'm actually is on the medical bed, and the ceiling, it wasn't a light bulb, the ceiling was lit up. So it's a really instead of like light bulbs, it's as if a material is light, is material itself is something that can light up. And that's, I don't look at light bulbs anywhere else in this place. But you're right, there's a lot of lit up areas, and I'm actually convinced when it comes to like rooms I was in that. And I report in the book some other rooms where the lights are on the walls actually, in different crafts and stuff. But in this environment, in the grand bigger environment, there was open windows up top, and so we're on this light walkway, and we fly to this location. We get out, so it's a weird like a tramway in an airport, very similar, except you just transport. The walkway takes you out to this elevator, and it's immediately there's no communication. It's as if the city was alive, like the crafts are alive, and the AI kind of runs things or knows what your impulses are and knows what your desires are. And there was a sense of that going on here, where it just sent us to this location, and this was an elevator, a physical elevator. And I have a whole theory about why I'm in a physical elevator. It's the only time this ever happens on a craft or in a city or anything advanced of theirs. And we get inside, and then it opens up, and we come out to his place, and his mom is there. So there's a definite sensation of his mom, him and his mom, and so she's very motherly, and I can feel the bond telepathically between them. And it's very friendly. Everything is, they want to show me their place. This is where we live. And it's like a condo. It would be exactly like a condo. It is exactly like a condo. Just that the environment is molded. It has a very strange, it really is kind of like it was created by one thing that whipped it all up together. There are couches. There was a table. There was a room, or a kind of a room off to the side that kind of, replicates, if you will, like a kitchen. And not that I saw taps or anything, but I definitely saw cupboards or big spaces like that. There was technology on the counter, and I'm like, like a dog, like what the hell? And I can see out to the environment. I can see out, so he has a view out into Venus or out into the landscape, and I can see the craft where we landed. So he has this obviously weird spot where he can see where we were, and he wants to show me the technology, and I can't understand it, and I'm kind of in a stupor state of like, he shows me this device, and I don't really know what it is, and then he lets go of a little metal piece, and it attaches this anyway. And even just describing it, I didn't know what it was, and I was kind of in a stupor about it. And he said, "Don't worry about it. Your society will get here really soon." So he's explaining something about tech, and that we'll get there. And I'm just I'm in a stupor. Then there's this kind of finality. Okay, we showed you. Okay, now let's bring you back down. And then he is very comforting to me in the elevator. He says some things because the other me, who doesn't know he's having contact, is in an emotional state about traveling and what he's doing. And so he's actually providing some interesting comfort there. And then that's it. He sends me down, and he says, okay, now go that way. He's all telepathy. Go that way on this light walkway. And so I'm like, what? Like, the guy, my guide is leaving me on an alien city. And it's a really weird, distinct feeling of like, what are you doing? You're going to leave me here? And he said, yeah, just go that way. Just kind of, get on the light walkway, and I'll take you there. And I don't know where he's going. I don't know where he's sending me. So he gets on, and he disappears really quickly off this light walkway. And I get on, and now I'm traveling. I'm going this opposite direction. And it's clear from traveling on it, yeah, it's like phasing me, but keeping me in enough form that I'm able to witness the environment around me. So I can see we're moving really fast, and we're going deep into this city. And I can see towers through the ceiling glasses. I can see towers outside. So it's obviously just a huge city, and I just keep going further and further into it. And all of a sudden, I get shot right up into another transporter space. And as I materialize here, I'm in a small environment. I'm in an environment of smaller objects, and it all just makes sense to me. I know exactly what's going on. I'm in the elder's room, and the elder literally comes out from around the corner. And so this gray alien, who I'm interacting with, shows me her home. So it's a very it's sweet.
Humbling. Yeah.
It's humbling. It's also very it's really weird, right? It's really the dynamics are very strange for human minds. We want these things to be so abnormal. I think I've heard people on the internet say these are not your friends, right? Not to me, they didn't say that, but they really want this to be, like a bear. People make friends with grizzly bears, and grizzly bear can definitely eat you. And people say don't, grizzly bears shouldn't be your friends. And there's something really, I think all species get something out of interspecies. I think there is something about it it's a different type of joy. And what this was one of those moments of kind of very open-hearted joy of learning her inviting me in and me learning more about her world and almost how human she can be, right? How normal some of this stuff is that we expect it to be way off, and in fact it's much more relatable than we believe it to be or expect it to be. And she's, welcome, Jeff. Come in, basically. She's wearing a very weird outfit that is a hologram suit. So there's holograms that have depth in her suit. It's like she's wearing relaxed clothing, like she wants to tell me this is her relaxed clothing.
She's like, I go to raves,
Yeah, it's something weird like that. It's like, I'm a wacky person. It's kind of what it is. There's something really weird, bizarre about it. And like she has a quirky personality, actually. She's kind of showing me that. Yeah, you got it. There's something a little bit on edge about it, or edgy about it, yeah. And she basically sits me down, and she brings me water. So she has access to this, and then she has a cup of liquid. And then she sits me down, and I'm like, at this point, my 8th contact event, me and her made the agreement happen and the experiment happen. So it was personal to me and personal to her, I guess, to some degree. So it had this moment of like reflecting, like we did it. And I actually say that to her, like we did it. We made a me, which is how she framed it. We'd make a separate identity that you would use to help the experiment and make the experiment work, which I would consider to be the me that knows them. This whole idea that there's a dual soul or a separate personality that interacts with these entities. And then she says, well, you did most of the work. I just led you kind of in the right direction. It was really weird. It's really weird to have a calm, reflective moment with the entities. And they're not very chatty either. I know I'm reflecting about things at the time, but then I start wanting to know more about her environment, and I get up. And so I'm starting to look around like, okay, this is where you live. This is pretty crazy. And she lives like we do. Like it's like a condo. I mean, it's not exactly like we do, but there's a condo. She had a window, and it looked out also a bit to the environment, to the gaseous environment. And yeah, it was pretty weird. She has a space, and then there was this weird chair that was kind of in the middle of the room, and it had a console over top, or like a pad over top of the viewer space. It was like a relaxed recline chair. And that has for the eyes would have like a visual thing over a band over the eyes. And so I'm curious about this, and I say, what is this? And she said, this is my entertainment. Sit in it, check it out. And I sit down in it, and I squeeze into it because it's her size, and immediately on the band, so that I put the band in front of me, and then in front of the band, these objects, these shapes come out. These it's weird that it's their entertainment. I don't even know what's going on there. But though I have some theories, and I've talked about this in some of the videos, this stuff seems to interact with their brain in a very different way than humans would expect. And it goes into my brain, and it feels awful. It's these kind of shapes, and I can't explain, like kind of oblong shapes, curved, or not curved, but blocks that all kind of come out in different formations. And it's interacting with my brain, and it makes me want to feel like I want to throw up, and I get out of it really quickly, and I'm questioning her. It's almost very just relaxed and jovial, or just jokingly, and I'm like, that's your entertainment? And she's like, I'm a different being than you are.
We're going to throw some Tetris in your head. There you go. Right. Have some Tetris blocks in your head.
sounds like you've been there. It blocks. Yeah, like Tetris blocks almost coming out in your head. Yeah, and affecting your brain in a way you didn't expect it to. And then that's kind of it. There's a feeling of like, okay, you saw it. Now it's time to wrap up. I'm confused that I'll continue having contact events with her. None of it makes sense to me, the big picture stuff. And so I think it's the end. I'm like, oh. And she's like, we'll see you again soon. And I'm like, what does that mean? I don't understand. And she basically, that happens as I'm in the portal or in the transporter, but I'm expecting this to be our last interaction. And she's like, I'll see you again soon. And I don't understand what it means. And she fires me back. And then back on that light rail, and I come out on a spot where that humanoid is, and we're in the environment, the kind of the big city environment. And this is where I really see a big picture of what this is. And it's kind of like a mall without the commerce. It's like a big mall environment and leisure and a lot of entities in gowns, jumpsuits. I see. I'm convinced I see these mantis creatures, but the ones that look like mine with kind of snouts. And they have the big eyes, and and when they aren't in the big gowns, they're actually quite tall and slender. And I see those type of entities, and I see tall grays, and I see humanoids, and he's got buddies. He's like talking with humanoids as I come out of this space, and he knows, okay, it's time to go back. So I come out and I'm looking at this environment, and I think I describe it quite a bit in the book. There's the kind of the walkway. I'm up on a higher level. I see kind of down below, and kind of try to describe best what I see. And I've drawn pictures of it and did presentations on it. And we get back into the light walkway, and we're heading back to the craft. And that's when I ask him, what's your name, by the way? And he says, we don't have names like you have names. I've taken that now so many times, and only to learn that contactees find that these entities don't have names a lot of the times. They don't have physical names like we do. And that's very telling. Takes me back into the craft, and he drives me. He flies us back. And there's a full thing here where I see the base we were just in. So as if we are phased or another dimensional space or phased space, and everything, I can see everything and interact with everything. And then in the human world, it's all phased out, and I can't see that stuff anymore. So we fly back, and we fly past that base, and he sends me back to Hornby Island, and that's that. So it was a reward to see their world.
But thanks for that. That's a wild experience. I would be like the dog too. I'd just be like, where am I at? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. You're not asking questions, right? That's the other crazy part too. You're just like, you're just grateful you're being shown this much level, and that there's trust on their behalf to send you there. Like all those kind of things that are in your head. Like, oh, like I want to keep myself good. Like I want this more. And there was always a drive after that to like, oh, I can't wait to have more of that. And I really don't get more of it. And you always kind of hope it gets bigger and better. And that really was, I'll keep having interactions with them, but going to Venus was one of the most extremes and one of the best. And and it's other. Also, I find the synchronicity really interesting too. That you'll get people channeling or talking about, or even Valiant Thor, all having this kind of Venus connection, and it's all very, very spiritual. It's a very weird game, and I think how the synchronicity I always look at is they sent me to Venus right after the rising, right after they gave me this consciousness event when I'm in my most purest state. So that's a really weird thing to me, that maybe that's what allowed me to be there. So I was in this kind of hyper purity, and then which maybe these other contactees talk about or have experienced as well, or these channels are talking about. And then here I am, and I'm in my pure state. I can get there. I can be in that space, and it's kind of like that. I don't know. It was powerful though. Yeah.
If you were to give advice, and I'm not trying to put you in any spot, if you were to give advice to, let's just say the new experiencer, how about that?
Yeah.
The new experiencer who may have just yesterday, last week, a month ago, a couple hours ago, just had their first experience, and they decided to jump on, and they found this specific interview.
Yeah.
What outlook would you want to give them?
So I'm the God guy. I that's always going to be my message. The whole side here, I have the whole alien contact, but I also got trained 20 plus years with a Vedic guru, and the whole thing, it's like the aliens knew. I mean, they did. They tell me that the timelines and what the kind of the types of experience they gave me can get processed properly when I spent 20 years, meditating and under Vedic philosophy. And I think that they knew all that picture, and they did. Again, I say that, but it's just really fascinating, those crossovers. And the grounding that gives me tells me everything about what I think humans need, at least from my perspective, my opinion. And I think the knowledge that we are God is the core of it all. I think that, and God, the universe is alive, and then our individuated offshoot, individuated consciousness is that. It is that. And the whole Vedic practice is to put that God into the identity of this God. So it's not separate gods. It's just one God, and you're aware of that. And I think that does so much. First off, it embodies the higher self. So it helps in your past. It helps in your transition or your transgression through the birth and death life cycle. It 100% does. I have a whole theory about it and a whole thing that, from my research, that this is if you find God within, you retain that, and you'll be able to utilize that in other lives. And then that's one. Number two is that you protect yourself. So I've had my own experiences with not malevolent entities, but not, I don't call them negative, but definitely disturbed entities, or maybe entities who have different agendas than you want for yourself. And no better way to protect yourself than by knowing where your power lies. And so again, your God is the kind of the first element to that. Also, all the human mind is such a projecting organ of our own psyche, where we want something, so we have to go out and try and grab it. So I want, and all in the spiritual topics we have here, especially with experiencers, I want remote viewing. I want to go out and figure out how to get remote viewing. I want past life awareness. I'm going to go and figure out how to get that. But when you go to the God side, you realize what you're focusing on. All those are offshoots of what we really are, which is this dimensional entity. So it's this bigger, higher self dimensional thing that is in unity. And those things open up naturally. And that's what I found in the whole Vedic philosophy talks like that. And that's how I got trained. So you focus on, it's a weird paradox. Focus on God, focus on God, focus on God, within, focus on God within, but also without, because you're in unity with it. And those things become natural parts of your existence. And I find all my learning came through that type of all those abilities, if you will, came through from just focusing on source within. And so I always come back to, I feel the ultimate teaching that got taught to me is that God is, you are God, I am God, we are God, God is everything. And that's a game that takes a long time, actually. It's not something with which I say, and it's frivolous. That becomes the life mission. And I think that if we focus on that, that cures everything. It brings all the focus back to the right spots, and we empower ourselves the most. And because if you're also the God, then that means you're also creating your reality. If you're creating a reality, then you have to learn the parts of your reality you don't like, why you created those, and ultimately you're also learning how to get the power with which to create the world you do want. So there's a creation element to that I think is the most powerful of them all, that humans are creators, and we're utilizing that God power in a being state with thoughts and feelings that are energy, actually, that project outwards in manifesting reality. And so I think God is the big point of this all, and that we are God. Whatever people want to call that, I call it God.
I definitely agree. But God has nothing to do with I am God has nothing to do with ego. It's not
Right.
used to oppress others or
Right.
have supremacy over others. We are all equal. We are all one. We're all
That's
one
it.
part of the God. And
Yeah.
once you realize that, like you said, then it pretty much frees you from all. It really does.
Yeah, and it's a weird game because we are so used to historical perspective of this that when we're saying, like, we think God is up there and we're just down here, and we don't have that much importance. We're not that intelligent. We're not that smart, and humans are weak. And oh, please, God, please don't do this to me. And reality, yeah, it's actually no. You're at the same level as it. That's what you don't know. And you're right. And then it's not about ego, because when you're at the same level, that means everyone's at the same level. That means the whales are at the same level, right? It means the aliens are at the same level. And yeah, you got it. So there's a weird ego thing that has to eradicate from even just contemplating and accepting these ideas.
One of the parts of the fear narrative, or of this, these groups are approaching and are going to take things over, is that they somehow have the perspective that they're higher than us, or
Right.
we're like serving them, like master and slave thing, which is completely out of the mindset that they have. And
Yeah.
as you have these experiences, you realize that, oh, everything is equal. The insect that I almost stepped on is as equal to everything.
Again, it's weird. I always come back to the compassion element of, like, non-disclosure, and because it makes sense how the human mind is very fragile, actually, for these types of things. Like, I can almost see why the aliens would have a weird way of disclosure through genetics and being quiet or behind the scenes, because the human tendency is to actually make those things our god, or to say I don't have power, but they have all the power. And yeah, we have that weird ego tendency on the other flip to just not give ourselves power, even though it might be staring us in the face. We want to reject it because it means we have to take responsibility for the things that we don't like in our lives. So it's a weird game about the power element. And actually, here's the thing for the listener out there who I tell you you're God, and you have that little, it's almost like, it's like almost like repulsive. Like, I don't want to hear that. Right? It's like, gross. That might be the problem, right? That weird, we hear those words and we have this kind of weird rejection, even because it opens up all the historical stuff that sits with us about God, about God, and even the word God, that we have all this history that some of the religions have, made very negative for us, and hell, and that breaks up all these other horrible things that have that perspectives that we have taken on throughout our history, and that's the problem. We actually have to overcome those and let God be a very normal aspect of our society, regardless of what you're calling your God. If it's Jesus or Krishna or Buddha or Guru or whatever. Like we have to find a way to come to the human level, but how to put it all together. And because that's where your power is. We are God.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Where can we find you, sir? Where can we find you? Where can the viewer find you? Find out more about you, find access to your book and such.
Yeah, you got it. So my name is Jeff Selver. My website is basically that name, JEFFSELVER.com. And there you can find my book, The Rising and the Alien Plan to Build an Enlightened City on Earth. All my 26 contact events are in there. I have essays there. I have a workbook, a Rising workbook, and everything is linked there. You can find my YouTube channel from there. I have a YouTube channel where I do a lot of presentations as well too, and for UFO groups and such. All my interviews are there as well too. So all my playlists, sightings, I have still sightings from crafts, and I put everything up online. Also have a Facebook account, and that's it. Reddit, and sometimes I post there as well too. So.
Cool. And you also compose music, correct? You
That's right.
You make music. You make music.
Yeah. I'm still a musician at heart. You got it. Yeah, totally. I still play the guitar and stuff. And cool. I haven't done too much public in years. But apparently a lot of contactees are musicians, and so I fit that totally. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to make sure I plugged that.
We'll be sure to put all that the links below, including to your book.
Sounds great. Yeah, Christian, thank you for having me. Daniel, thank you for having me. Jonathan, thank you for having me. Been a pleasure, guys. Absolutely.
Been a pleasure. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Like, share, follow, subscribe, all that jazz. You know what to do. Do it. Why haven't you done it yet? We're wondering. The universe is wondering. No more better time than the present, because the present is always now. Take care. Bad monkey.